up this morning, blues walking like a man. It's up this morning, blues walking like a man. What blues? Give me your right hand. Spell mama's child, she told me hold upside down. Spell mama's child, she told me hold upside down. Travel on, poor Bob, just can't turn me round. Low down, shaky feeling. Low down, shaky feeling. Ain't never had them. Hope you never will. Naked on heart disease. Blues. Naked on heart disease. That consumption killed me by degrees. Drive my blues away. Study in the rain. Drive my blues away. Go to the distillery. Stay out all day. Hey everyone, James Limerick Kerr here, and today we're going to be looking at Robert Johnson's Preachin' Blues, Up Jump the Devil. So another one of his classic bottleneck tracks, really a tour de force of slide playing. Always loved this one, so we'll be breaking it down in a lesson here today and show you some of the main phrases and licks that Robert uses on this this classic tune. So basically the tuning for the song Preachin' Blues is in an open D tuning with the capo on the 2nd fret. That's how I like to do it. You could actually play the tune in an E tuning without the capo, but on the acoustic I feel like in the E tuning it's a little too much string tension to take the D string all the way up to E for me. So I prefer to play in D tuning and then add the capo on the 2nd fret. And we know, of course, that Robert frequently used a capo. He's one of the 3 photos we have of Robert. In fact, he's got a capo on his guitar. So he definitely used a capo. So I would play it in a D tuning and then the capo on the 2nd fret, bringing us up to the key of E for this song. So the D tuning is low D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. And then with the capo, it should sound like this. 6th string, 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, 1st string. Which is going to sound like an E chord when we get the capo on there. All right, so Robert used 3 different tunings primarily. 2 for bottleneck. This current tuning that we're using, basically I'm calling it an open D tuning. And then he uses an open G tuning, which I talk about quite a bit in my Crossroad Blues lesson video. So if you enjoy this lesson, be sure to check out Crossroad Blues and also the lesson I did on Walkin' Blues. Both of those he uses a G tuning, although I make the case that it's basically a G tuning, but he's tuned a little high, closer to A flat. And then on those he's got the capo on the 3rd fret, is how I believe he did it. So I go into quite a bit of detail on those tunes about that tuning. So there isn't just one tuning that Robert used, and then of course he uses standard guitar tuning on the tunes he uses without the bottleneck. All right, so, and then there's a couple of variations here and there that he does, but those are the 3 main tunings that he uses. The D tuning, the G tuning, but he's actually a little sharp closer to A flat, and then standard tuning when he's playing a lot of the songs without the bottleneck. All right, so I'm a firm believer that the recordings are not sped up, which I go into quite a bit of detail in my Crossroad Blues lesson video. I think that is categorically false, that all the recordings were sped up somehow, so the effect of all his virtuosity and high singing was somehow basically because the recordings were sped up a little bit, and he in fact played it a little at lower keys and slower tempos. I think that's completely false. I'll summarize a few of my reasons for thinking that. None of the Robert's contemporaries, who heard him regularly during his lifetime, including his family members, his sister, half-sister has written a book at this point. Most famously, his family members who heard him play all the time, and his contemporaries like Johnny Shines, who played with him all the time, and then of course Son House, who heard him frequently. And none of them ever mentioned the fact that his recording sounded unusually sped up or unlike his voice. So all the many interviews that have on record of people who heard Robert in the flesh while he was alive, none of them ever mentioned the fact that his recordings ever sounded uncharacteristically high or sped up. And then the fact that the sessions, there was 5 different days of recording over the course of 2 different years, 1936 and 1937, in San Antonio and Dallas. So the idea that all 5 of those recordings, sessions, days were somehow magically sped up to exactly the same degree so that his vocal timbre sounds consistently the same on all the recordings just seems highly implausible to me. And the fact we know he used the capo, as I mentioned, that we know in one of the photos he's using the capo, and he's a tenor singer, he sings high. So all those reasons and others are why I feel that the recordings were not sped up. I think any recordings you find on YouTube where his recordings are slowed down are essentially clickbait. Is really my feeling on that, and that's not how he sounded. So the magic is in Robert's playing. We have a tendency to want to explain away whether it was a deal with the devil at the crossroads or the recordings are sped up. He couldn't possibly have been that good. Actually, he was that good. So that's my feeling. So he was just a special player. So that's my firm belief. The recordings are not sped up. If you want to hear more detail about that, check out my Crossroad Blues video. He also used a thumb pick. We know from one of the photos that Robert used a thumb pick. So as you're playing along with the lesson video, I urge you to, if you want to really get into this style of early acoustic blues and Delta blues, start playing around with the thumb pick. You'll hear, especially on this tune, a lot of those percussive chops that he does. You can really get more of an effect, I think, with the thumb pick. You can get more volume, kind of more clarity in the attack. So if you're not already, I would urge you to start playing around with the thumb pick in this style. And we know Robert used a thumb pick. All right, so I urge you, if you get something out of this video, please do subscribe. And I would love to hear any of your thoughts about any of those comments or the lesson in general. So do leave a comment and subscribe. Also, I'm available for some Zoom lessons, so if you want to go into deeper detail on this tune or any of Robert's other classics and take your slide playing further, then get in touch. You can leave in the comments below or get in touch with me on my website. And then I heartily urge you to check out and get a copy of my guitar textbook, which was published last year, that I'm very psyched about. A 21st Century Guidebook for Guitarists, Practice, Performance, and Teaching by James Limerick Kerr. So I've been using this book with all my students that I teach with at Columbia University and City University of New York. And it's a textbook that'll really, I think, take your playing to another level in terms of your theory, knowledge, improvisation. There's whole sections on performance and earning a living from teaching guitar. So I urge you to check it out. I'll leave the link below from ordering for the publisher. It's available in both hard copy and ebook is a little cheaper. So check that out. Do subscribe, and thank you all for listening, and let's get to the lesson. All right, so this is in D tuning, as I mentioned. So let's get some tuning notes here without the capo on. So we're in a D tuning. So first string D, second string A, third string F sharp, fourth string D, fifth string A, and sixth string D. So if you're new to this tuning, it's a wonderful tuning to use for a bottleneck slide, and I'm sure you will enjoy exploring a whole new world if the D tuning is new for you. And then adding the capo to the second fret is how I believe Robert played this tune. So stick the capo on the second fret, tighten it up, and then we should be in the key of E. So that's how we want to sound. One last thought about my belief that the recordings were not significantly sped up, or at least enough not to alter his voice in any significant way. There was no pitch standard back for most of music history, so the fact that some of his tunes don't match our modern tuners A equals 440 hertz is no reason at all to think in and of itself that the tuning was, or the recording was sped up or altered in some way. For most of music history, there was no international pitch standard. A equals 440 hertz. So some of his tunes, like Crossroad Blues, I mentioned, Walking Blues, Coming on My Kitchen, Traveling Riverside, these, he's going to be a little off from our tuner, but he's certainly is wonderfully in tune with himself, sounds spot on in tune. So there's many factors, especially a solo performer, you would tune the guitar to what sounds good to you, to how that instrument speaks to you on that day, to your voice. So there's no pitch standard. A equals 440 hertz is not a factor. But this tune, however, is pretty much smack on key with our tuners in the key of E. So I'm not sure how the sped up theorists would explain that, but this one is right in tune with our tuners pretty much. You can play along with this one in E. Whereas some of the other ones I mentioned in the G tuning, he seems to be closer to A flat, is my theory. He's tuned sharp, and there's precedent for that with Willie Brown's Future Blues, who of course is a huge influence mentor to Robert, who even mentions by name in Crossroad Blues. So check out Future Blues. You'll hear that it's a G tuning, but it's closer to A flat on some of those tracks. So, and use the capo. So anyway, I could rant about that all day, but let's get to playing this one. This one is pretty much smack on a pitch with our tuners if you tune to that D tuning, which we just did, and put on the capo, and then we're in E tuning. All right, so this intro, you're going to basically be comfortably up here at the 14th fret. So if you have a 14th fret guitar, that's ideal for this style, but you can certainly still get there with a 12th fret, meaning 14 frets to the body before the body starts. So I'm not a believer in using tab for my blues students and learning this style using tab. So use your ears, use the video, use the rewind button. Those are the age-old tools, which will be far more productive to your progress than getting some numbers off a page, which is not going to have the most important ingredients. The feeling and the rhythm is not going to be present in the tab. So use your ears and use the video. So we'll break things down slowly here. So beginning with this intro, it's kind of a standard turnaround intro, nothing too remarkable at all about the introduction here. And then it's when he kicks in the riff, which we'll get to in a minute. That's where the real magic happens on this track. But this is kind of a standard turnaround intro. So a lot of times when I hear people play these intros, the timing is not quite right. So make sure I'm feeling that like it's actually triplets. So it's the second two notes in a triplet. So if a triplet is triplet, triplet, trip, meaning 3 notes per beat, that's what we call triplets. If you leave out the first one, ta, 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 ta. That's the rhythm. So focus on the timing on this tune as much as just what fret you're playing. The timing is at least as important. So, ta, 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 ta. And we're up here, as I mentioned, on the 14th fret and the top 2 strings. So I'm picking with the right hand, middle finger on the first string, and index on the second string. And that's very common for slide playing. What I call blocking, I'll get into in much greater detail in a beginner slide lesson video, so stay tuned for that. If you're more new to slide, this is a more advanced slide tune. Although if we slow down the tempo, I think there's a lot an intermediate slide player can get out of this lesson. And then of course his tempo on this one is really the biggest challenge. It's extremely fast. So we're going to break it down slowly. You can still have a lot of fun and get a lot out of this tune by studying it slowly. And then one more thought before we really get into it is I'm a great believer that learning the masters, off the recordings as closely as you can for the purposes of, your own study and progress is of great benefit. That's the age-old method. We've all studied the masters. But then, the goal is to then, as you progress, develop your own style. You can find your own way of playing the songs. It's of great benefit to study the masters, learn the recordings, and then as you progress, find your own voice, find your own way of playing the tunes. So this one, 14th fret, index, but I started to talk about blocking. So what I mean by that is that a finger essentially returns to a string, and then there's a lot of muting of strings you don't want ringing. So in this first lick, my thumb's just resting on the 3rd string, and then I'm picking. You just do the top 2 strings open. That's all I'm doing with the right hand. So I'm plucking index on the 2nd string, middle on the 1st, together. First one is straight on with the slide, and then, of course, with slide playing, you want to be right over the fret. So the middle of your slide should be over the fret. It's not like playing it standard fretted guitar where you're in the middle middle of the fret, you're going to be way out of tune. So make sure your slide is centered right over the fret to be in tune. All right, so if you're totally new to slide playing, stay tuned for a intro to slide playing where I'll go over a lot of the basics of blocking and muting with the bar. I'd recommend my Crossroad Blues lesson video, and also Walkin' Blues is probably the easiest of the three that I've done so far of Robert's songs. So you might want to start with Walkin' Blues and then as you progress. All right, but make sure you're always with the slide right over the fret to be in tune, not in the middle of the fret. All right, so I'm right over the 14th fret. Ta, ta, triplet, and then I'm picking the first one straight on, the first two, and then the second batch of triplets there I'm sliding up to. Straight, slide, slide, and then just an open pick. So let's do that slowly. And then 6-string 3rd fret. If we're using the capo on the second fret, I'm just going to call that essentially becomes the nut. So when I say 3rd fret, that's actually the 5th fret, but with the capo, it's the 3rd fret. You're going to do a little slide up. Which is a common move. You're going to go slide up to the 3rd fret and then pick open chord. So that's da, 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 da. And then this walk down. Here I actually fret the notes with the finger. One of the few things in this song where I actually use the finger. And here it's a standard turnaround walk down. In this tuning, it's on the 5th string, starting on the 3rd fret. Ta, 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 ta. So everything else is open. I'm picking 3rd string and 1st string on top of that with index and middle. Thumb on the 5th string. Thumb pick. And then he kind of sets the groove with those open picks with the thumb. So I'm doing that. Down with the thumb, up with middle. And then we're into the real special part of the tune is this lick here. So let's do that whole intro a little under tempo, about half speed. 3, 4, 1. Look at this, a little less than half speed. So he's really cooking at about, if we put a metronome to what the recording is about 140 beats per minute. So if we slow that down considerably to about 60, let's hear that. Ba da 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 do 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 do. So the first thing I would do to get set for this riff here is getting accustomed to this thumb chop, if you're not used to that. That's just a muted downstroke with the thumb. just a percussive downstroke, and it's such a nice backbeat is what that is. On beats 2 and 4, like a snare, think of it like a snare drum. Chop. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just get a feel for that. You're going to have to do a whole bunch of those if that's new for you. Do this with a thumb pick, and you could do it, start to work on it without a thumb pick until you get one. But eventually you're going to want a thumb pick, like I mentioned. You'll just get more of an attack with that that technique. That kind of a muted snare drum, kind of a backbeat. And then we're going to start on 14, which is the root, by the way. So that's an E up there on the first string. And then, so it's E, chop, D, 12th fret, D, chop. So just get that. So that's 14, chop, 12, chop. Just loop that. I'm just picking that single note with middle finger on the first string. Little vibrato, but you can add that later. And then we go down to the second half of the riff, which is a great riff in itself. So that's first string, 3rd fret, with a little bent note up to 3rd fret. One note there, as I hear that sound a little choked, is that you're going to want a guitar ideally with high action for playing bottleneck. So an acoustic that has very comfy low action, particularly on the treble strings, is not going to work great for getting nice singing notes. You're going to want something with highish action. So you may even want to get your guitar set up, raise the action up a little bit, so that if you're going to really get into this style. This guitar is a little too low. I love this guitar. So some of my notes in the recording got a little buzzy in there. So that's 3rd fret on the first string, open first, and then 6th string, 3rd fret, first string open, and then ending on the 4th string open, which is an E. So it's put that together. That's all right. Chop. Chop. So it's tricky at first. That may seem really hard to get the right feel on those chops. Just a lot of repetition. I would just practice the chop by itself, as I mentioned, and feel it as 2 and 4. So tap your foot, tap. That's a good exercise in itself for this tune. Tap on 1 and 3, chop on 2 and 4. Chop. So if we count that, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's definitely some upbeat syncopation in this riff. This last E on the 4th string is on the upbeat. Let's stick a metronome on that so you can really see where the notes land in the rhythm on there. That's a little faster. If we put the metronome about 50 for now. Notice this last E on the 4th string is on the upbeat, 4th string open. this first one is on downbeat. This is on the upbeat. So these are... So knowing and being really comfortable with which notes are on the downbeat, which ones are on the upbeat, is, as I mentioned, the timing is possibly the most important ingredient in this riff and in the style. So just getting the notes but without the rhythm, you're missing at least half of the magic there. So metronome is always great for that. I urge my students to practice with the metronome. Tap your foot. Always be working on your timing. Everybody needs to work on their timing, including you. All of us. Everything you can, as much as you can practice with a metronome, working on rhythm, is going to benefit your playing. But when you're playing this stuff, Delta blues or acoustic solo blues, I would urge you to always tap your foot. Always. Just always have that foot going. Right there, wherever it should be, right with the click. That's all right, yeah. So that, just getting that in itself at this slow tempo is totally worth, spending a good chunk of time practicing that. And that alone might take a couple weeks to get just the feel of that at a slow tempo. So just be patient and look at playing the whole song as probably a long-term project. So you can just keep rewatching the video as you progress. You might just focus on that one section for a couple weeks, practice that, and then keep coming back to it as you progress. So then if we sped that up, and then gradually, as you work with the metronome, you can systematically, speed up your timing. And then you want to get it up to, of course, much faster. And then this other nice little lick he throws on. He puts in a really high singing note here. And that's 17th fret. It's basically the minor third. If we're in the E, that minor third above the root. That's the root. So let's see. So that's 17 back to E. Still doing that thumb chop in between the notes. So he does sticks a couple of those in there, here and there. And then fast forwarding to this, so after he comes out of that riff, he's basically singing over that riff for the whole verse. And then up to here, the last one. So that is the root on the second string. Sliding backwards, and then the third fret on the fourth string. That one took me a little while to get because it goes by so quick. Open fourth, and then third fret fifth. Also sing these licks. Oh, sorry. It's a very vocal style, so I'm also a big believer, in addition to tapping your foot all the time, sing any phrases you're learning. The slide should really be an extension of your voice. You should be able to sing that without playing the guitar. If you can't sing that, then you don't know it, right? So this one. walk down, kind of this ominous walk down, which is so hip. Word blue. That's fifth string. It's the same as our turnaround walk down, but it's almost a thumb mute. So he's palm mute rather. That's what it sounds like to me, that he's muting it a little bit. It's kind of in the back. It's a subtle thing underneath what he's... Word blue. Give me your right hand. So starting on that little turnaround section again, or transitional section. Word blue. Up to 14. Give me your right hand. Give me your right hand. And then I think timing wise, if you line up hand with coming back up to 14 again. Hand. And then this is a great another transitional. Rhythmically, it's a little different than what he did on the verse. Try this. So you're going to go 14, alternate it with a thumb chop. So on the first string, I'm going 14, 12, 14, but I'm putting a thumb chop in the middle of that. And then he's doing 3, 4 on the minor, major, minor third, major third on the fourth string. So coming out of this, I would say the bridge. I don't know what we would call this, but word blue. Give me your right hand. And then he's into the second verse. So that's took me a while to get the timing on this part. Give me your right hand. And I'll strum on the end of it. And then back to a second verse. He's a little more strumming on the second verse. Who's mama's child? So I did it something like that. It's a little hard to hear the details of what he's doing with his strumming pattern, but pick, strum, up, down. Mama's child. Again with a percussive chop on the end of it. So on that second verse, he's doing a little more strumming, and then he comes back to the lick. And at the end of each verse, he kind of goes. this walk down. So those are the key central riff ideas, I think, in this tune, Preachin' Blues. That'll certainly get you started and give you a lot to work on. And then you can gradually increase the tempo, and again, it's eventually very fast, about 140 beats per minute. But you can get a lot of value out of just studying those central riffs at this slow tempo. Do a lot of rewinding in my video here. You can even go to the settings and slow it down to half speed, even further than that. All right, so I hope you got a lot out of this to get you started with bottleneck slide in the key in the D tuning. Please do subscribe if this video is useful for your playing. I'd love to hear your comments. And again, I would urge you to check out my book, The 21st Century Guidebook for Guitarists. I use this with my college guitar students. So if you really are looking to improve your ears and your musicianship, your improv, and your also sections on earning a living teaching guitar and performance, you'll get a lot out of that. 21st Century Guidebook for Guitarists, Practice, Performance, and Teaching by James Limerick Kerr. So subscribe and stay tuned for lots more blues lessons and performance content on my channel here. All right, thanks. See you soon.